Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 44 of the Board Game Barrage podcast. I am your host, Neelan, and with me, as always, are my co-hosts, Mark and Kalen.
Why do you always make it so long? Can we just start talking about board games, please?
Well, it's because I'm in a thankful mood, having just come away from Thanksgiving. I'm celebrating my co-host.
Do you even celebrate Thanksgiving?
No, not technically, but I, as an American, Kalen, as a full-blooded American, yeah. This is now becoming an important part of my culture.
Great.
Eating food, mostly.
Lots and lots of food.
That's the single best part.
Also games.
Also playing games, yeah. It's a good weekend for like catching up with family, playing games. Yeah.
Getting some of those lighter party games out.
Yeah. Absolutely. This week on the show, as we sort of alluded to last week, we're going to be fielding some reader questions. We've had everyone send in some questions over email, over social media, and we sort of curated the best ones, and we're going to be answering those questions coming up later in the show.
Some of them aren't even questions. They're just more like statements.
That's true. And some of them were like embedded in like chunks of text, and then you sort of have to dig to find the actual question.
Oh, the gold.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like Mark.
Uncover
just
the
like I have to
gold
do with this
that
podcast every single episode.
Yeah. So that's coming later in the show. Before then, let's talk about the games that we've been playing this past week, as we always do. Kellen, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, this one's going to be hard because I don't know how to pronounce it. Blokus.
Yeah, I've always heard Blokus.
I've heard both.
We were pronouncing it as 100 different ways. I went out Black Friday shopping, as true full-blooded Americans do.
Yep.
And saw Blokus / Blokus for sale at Target for $10. $9.99 for Blokus / Blokus. This is a fantastic game, which I added to my collection. The box is horrible, which was sad, but the game is good. It's a geometric pattern game where you have Tetris shapes. What are they called, those, Neelan?
Tetraminos. Except I don't think
You're
they're technically
such a
tetraminos
nerd.
unless they're 4 squares each.
You are such a nerd. And in this game, there are 4 colors: yellow, green, blue, and red, and you start in the corner, and you can only place your own pieces diagonal to the other pieces that you've played. So you can't be orthogonally adjacent. Orthogonal is another word that only board game nerds really understand.
That's true.
That is true.
That's
yeah.
fair.
Anyway, and then you take turns trying to use as many of your pieces as you can, sort of spreading out to the middle. It's very, very satisfying to make a play in this game where you just sneak into your opponent's side, and then suddenly you have a bunch of new space to play in, because they can't play pieces next to their other pieces orthogonally. So if you're able to place the perfect piece, you can kind of diagonally jump over their pieces and get into their side. The game ends when players can't place any more of their pieces. You count up how many squares you have left. So if you have a piece with 4 and then a piece with 5, you're -9 is your score, and you're trying to be the one who has placed the most squares of his or her pieces. This is really good. It's a game that takes 15 to 20 minutes. It was $10 or $9.99 on Black Friday at Target in America. And the amount of game you get is just great. I think the downside is you must have 4 players. It has 2 or 3 player variants, but let's not even go there. It's just trying to trick you. You need 4 players. There are versions of Blokus for 2. There are versions of Blokus / Blokus for 3, which is like a triangle. This is really just for 4 players. The feeling I got is similar to playing Blue Lagoon, which is a much more full-featured game. But a lot of what I like about Blue Lagoon is just blocking you guys off so you guys can't do what you want to do and just causing that sort of heartache.
And this is direct heartache. This game is all about just a heartache part of it.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is because you can't place pieces next to your own pieces, when someone sort of breaks into your area, you're kind of mad at them just for the fact that they're going to be able to play more, but it's also like they're using area that you can't use either.
Right.
It's a fun game where at the beginning you're sort of haphazardly playing, and then middle of the game, near the end of the game, you're really trying to find that one place to fit all your pieces, and you just think, wow, I did this all wrong. Super great. Had a great time with the family. Ran it back 3 or 4 times. Happy to have it in my collection. That is Blokus / Blokus.
The time I played this, it was 2-player, but I think that must have mean I played the 2-player version of it. You're saying there's a specific
What were
version?
the colors?
It's too long ago to remember.
Are you colorblind?
No, I just don't remember the specific colors of a game I played 3 years ago.
It doesn't lend itself to a easy 2-player variant?
I think you can play 2 players where you both play 2. I don't
Colors.
didn't
Yeah,
even
yeah.
read it. I just everything I've
Yeah.
ever read about the game says play with 4.
But like, you couldn't just pick 2 colors and start on opposite ends of the board.
You would both be able to play all your pieces.
Oh yeah, the board would be too big.
You would have to sort of do
Yeah,
a-
I'm trying to remember.
I know there is a new version, I believe, of the 2-player that was released at Gen Con, if
Okay.
I'm not mistaken. It's good. It's really good.
Yeah, this is one that I've never played, but I've heard nothing but good things. It just seems like an abstract sort of simple,
Yeah, you
game
can
that
explain it in like 10 seconds, and
really
yeah.
appealing sounding.
We need a 4th person here, maybe a 4th co-host to play with us. If you want to apply, I heard that Shut Up and Sit Down is looking for interns.
Right.
We're looking for interns,
Right.
except you don't get paid and you can't be on the air.
Right. What are they doing again? The
I
editing?
think
Well,
it's
they're
for
the
their
f-
video side of it. I'm not sure.
No, what are we getting our
Oh,
intern
what are
for?
we getting? Oh, I see.
It's to play 4-player games. To
Oh,
play
okay.
Blokus slash Blokus.
Just to like hang in the corner of the room until we need a 4th player.
Okay.
and to carry the microphone.
Yeah,
Makes sense. I'm all for it.
Great.
they do all the work that I usually do, except also
We call it Nealon work.
Yeah.
I played Brass Lancashire, which is a updating of the classic game by Martin Wallace, which was just called Brass at the time. This is by Roxley Games. I played the Kickstarter version, which is quite souped up. It's got a really nice board. The money is replaced by Splendor-esque poker chips, linen cards. The production is just absolutely top-notch. I'd played Brass before once with the 2-player variant, and I remember enjoying it quite a bit. I really, really, really liked my play of Brass Lancashire. It's a card-driven, sort of an area control game, sort of pick up and deliver. There's a lot of things going on with it. The idea behind the game is that you are building industry throughout industrial era England, northern England. And you're doing that by playing cards that allow you to place these industry tiles around the board. You can play your cards to do one of a few things. You can play cards in order to place industry tiles out. You can play cards in order to sell products. You can play your cards in order to build rails. There's a couple really interesting aspects to this game that you don't really find in other sort of Euro-style games.
Just to help the listeners here, this
Yes.
is There Will Be Blood, the board game. Is that right?
That is, sure.
Or is that Wildcatters?
Well, I think that's Wildcatters, but there's a
Because
little
the
bit of
guy on the cover
that. Right.
is drinking
It does look
milkshakes.
like, yes, does look like Mr. Plainview. So there are a couple of interesting aspects of this game that sort of set it apart from other Euro games. One being the card-driven aspect of it. Just very interesting. It's a novel way to figure out where you're going to place your tiles. The other thing that's very interesting about it is that in order to build these industry tiles or build your industry, you need to spend 3 currencies. One is the money that you're acquiring to actually place the industry tiles on the board. But then you also need to spend either coal or iron. And you get that coal or iron by taking it from ironworks or coal mines that have been placed by either yourself or your opponent. So there's a sort of a shared aspect of building your industry by using the resources that perhaps your competitors have placed on the board. And there's a tempo aspect to it. There's like a location aspect to it, because when it comes to using coal, you're using coal from the nearest coal mine. So you may be helping an opponent who's built a coal mine there, because once a coal mine has been exhausted, it scores basically. Whereas iron is a different thing. Iron you can take from anywhere on the board. Anyway, that whole relying on competitors quite a bit to build your industry and sort of helping them out gives the game like a very interesting push-pull, because you want to start building things up, but you sometimes don't have the time to lay down your own coal mine. So you feel like, I need to get this cotton mill down right now before somebody else takes it. But that might mean I have to use Kalen's coal, which I don't want to do, but I have to do it in order to get in there. Anyway, it also has one other interesting aspect of it, is that the money you spend determines turn order for subsequent rounds. So if you spend the most money, you'll go last, and the least money goes first. So that's also part of the whole tempo thing. Do I need to jump in now? Because if I jump in now, I'm going to be spending a lot of money to build this industry, but then my opponents maybe can get the jump on me the next round. There's a lot of interesting things to take into account, and all the choices that you're making are about concessions to your opponent. Am I going to use their coal? Am I going to spend this money to give them the first player advantage, or to have them move ahead of me. So it's very interesting. If you're a fan of Wallace games, if you played Brass and you're interested in playing this new version, there's a couple of rule changes that I think makes the game more streamlined. I would absolutely recommend it. I had a fantastic time, and I'm looking forward to playing Birmingham, which is going to be coming up next.
When was Lancashire first designed, or at least when was Brass rather the original?
2007.
So you said you'd played the previous version?
Yes, I played the previous version, the 2-player version of it, which is you can play this game at 2 to 4, but in the previous version, the 2-player game was a variant.
Okay, whereas this is part and
full.
Okay,
fledged.
interesting.
I've played this at 3, and I played it at 3 players.
Was it a game that, like, prior to you like buying this new Kickstarter, sort of like lived in your memory as something that you felt, especially strongly about, like the older version? Okay.
I definitely enjoyed my play of the older version quite a bit, and it just struck me as I remember playing it and feeling this was a really unique economic Euro sort of game. So
that's cool, because I feel like when I saw the Kickstarter roll around, like, I mean, the art especially is striking, but it sort of just like created this buzz of excitement about the game, which I'd only mildly heard about prior to that. So I was just curious, like, how well regarded it sort of was prior to that point.
Yeah,
like, I feel like it was there as this undercurrent of discussion.
This is, I mean, the reason why I backed on Kickstarter, because as we've mentioned before on the show, I don't back games generally on Kickstarter, but the reason I backed it is because I knew it would be a good game.
But purely based on you having played it prior.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's cool then.
Yeah, and people who have, before this game came out, I mean, the people who liked Brass, and especially people like Martin Wallace games, I mean, Brass was super highly regarded. So
I feel like whenever I'd heard games designed by Martin Wallace, like Brass was obviously the one that came up as the
pinnacle of his design.
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Very cool. And if you haven't seen like a picture of this game, it's beautiful. It's actually striking in a way that very few board games are.
Yeah.
It's got very unusually good art.
Yes, the art is fantastic, and it's quite dark, which people have remarked about how maybe it's a little too dark, but it's just, it's very rich, and it's very like, you're talking about these coal industries. It's very like earthy, sort of hands in the dirt sort of industry. So the darkness sort of like lends itself to that. But yeah, it's totally beautiful. And the production art aside is fantastic.
Do you have like a special edition of it, or is this just the standard new release of it?
This is the Kickstarter version, which I think has a couple things like, I don't think the poker chips are in the standard in the retail edition, but yeah, it's great.
Cool.
Great game.
Very cool.
Is it ethical to play a game about coal mining?
Yes.
I'm just going to let your answer speak for it.
Why would it not be ethical to play a game about coal mining? Is it ethical to play a game about gladiators?
I don't want to answer.
I played a game which I've been hotly anticipating for some time now. This is Teotihuacan. It is designed by Daniel Taschini, who is the designer of Tzolk'in. Tzolk'in, as listeners might know, is probably my favorite strategy game. It's certainly a game
You're never safe when you say that one of your games is your favorite. I will question you.
That's fair. Yeah, exactly. Surely I would play it every day if it was my favorite game, Kalen.
You'd use the word fun and you'd play it every...
exactly. I haven't once called either
every
of these games
day of
fun.
your life.
Yep, exactly. So Teotihuacan...
And Teotihuacan is actually... So it's funny because I've been there, and I don't know the pronunciation, but it seems like more people are saying Teotihuacan than Teotihuacan.
So
but it's interesting.
No. What is interesting about this is like the official FAQ for the game that's been put out actually has a pronunciation primer, and what they claim is that it depends on who's like the European Spanish pronunciation versus like what would probably be closer to the original pronunciation. It's interesting. There's a little bit of divergence there.
Cool.
But anyway, so Teotihuacan it's not actually substantially similar to Tzolk'in, but you can sort of see some elements in terms of like this forward planning aspect. Tzolk'in is very good at, you have to think a few moves ahead in order to be effective. So the way Teotihuacan works is there are 8 action spaces arranged in a sort of a loop around the board. At the start of the game, you have 3 workers, which are represented by dice, and they go through 5 levels as you just rotate the die 1 through 5. The game is about moving your worker 1, 2, or 3 spaces forward on this track, and then paying as much currency as there are other players on that spot, and doing the action more effectively if more of your workers are on that spot. So there's this balance of trying to find spots that are unoccupied and also trying to bunch your workers together to make those actions really powerful. So you can imagine like the amount of like forward planning that this rewards if you're sort of setting your dice up so that they're all in the correct position to line up in subsequent turns. The basic premise of what you're trying to do is sort of, as you can imagine from most Euro games, you're collecting resources, you're spending those resources to build buildings. There's sort of this central pyramid, which is this nice iconic display of the components of the board, which is like these sort of mahjong tile type structure that gets built in the middle that just forms like sort of an Aztec pyramid as the game progresses. And all of this is in service of collecting victory points. You collect victory points when you place pyramid tiles, when you decorate the pyramid, as you build buildings. There are 3 eclipses that trigger over the course of the game, which is sort of the game clock, and each of those is a massive scoring phase. It has elements of Tzolk'in in that you have these 3 worship tracks that you're also progressing up, and those give rewards depending on how high up you are on each of those tracks. You have to be able to pay your workers every cycle. It's definitely sort of feels like it has elements that are going to sound immediately familiar if you've played Tzolk'in or played, a lot of Euro games that are in this vein. But the specifics of the dice track, the timing mechanic, the forward planning is something I find I so strongly associate with Tzolk'in, and sort of definitely comes through in this design despite being radically different. It's not worker placement in the way that Tzolk'in is, but it still rewards similar strategies.
It sounds like a rondel game.
It is actually a rondel, but it's in a way that you wouldn't immediately think of it as a rondel. It's sort of like an abstracted rondel, and that the whole board is just one giant rondel of action spaces.
Goody.
It's goody. Elaborate?
An abstracted rondel.
Oh, I see.
It just gets me
Just
going.
the most exciting thing you've ever heard?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. I think the things I like a lot about this game is, like I said, this central dice movement mechanic is just inherently satisfying, because also as you're sort of doing these actions, these dice are leveling up through these 5 levels. Once they get to 6, they sort of die and are reborn, and you get a reward for them. And they're just like these fun progressions where you're either trying to sort of, ascend your dice or do the action that the least people are sort of competing for. There are a lot of really cool decisions, and one of the things that I haven't sort of dug into that much is there's a whole lot of variability to the setup. You can sort of vary the positions of the action boards, the different rewards that are available on the tracks. I really like this a lot. I played it a couple of times now, and it's been pretty satisfying each of the times I've played it.
How long is the game?
I would say anywhere between an hour and a half to 2.5 hours was the longest game I played of it.
I feel like there should be a Euro metric that we use, which is like, will Kalen like this Euro game?
So I that is one of the things that's foremost in my mind, because I think this is one of the ones you've mentioned as being potentially interested in.
I definitely want to try it.
Yeah.
I mean, I will take pot shots all day. Thank
Totally.
you.
So I'm not convinced you're going to like this, but I think you should try it. I think you should try
absolutely.
it. The one thing I will say, this does have not really a downside necessarily, but it does share a rule setup thing that with Tzolk'in, in that if you're playing with less than 4 players, you're just putting dummy players to block spots on the board, which feels a little bit unsatisfying if you're playing with 2 or 3 players. They're just these arbitrary workers blocking spots that they wouldn't otherwise. I feel like I wish that the game could be more elegantly designed around supporting like 2 or 3 players without that, but it works. It works. Yeah, I'm intrigued to play this one a lot more. I think my super hot take is I don't like this as much as Tzolk'in, but it's super interesting. It's also like a really cool looking board. Like it's very subtle colors. It's like very muted tones.
And the mahjong.
Yeah, the pyramid
really
as it assembles is a very
really
cool looking thing. Yeah.
You described it as iconic, which led me to Google to figure out what an icon was and whether something could be iconic after sort of being released for like 2 days. It can't.
When did I describe it as iconic? In the beginning?
In the beginning.
Okay, fair enough.
I think the mahjong tiles can be an iconic game
that's
element.
what it was. Yeah. I think that fits. I think it's the thing that most people strongly associate with the look of it.
But we'll cut out that last part so you got zinged.
Yep. Bye. That is Teotihuacan.
So you like it, but you don't feel like this is going to be like top 10, top 20 material?
Oh, I don't know about that. I think Tzolk'in, like, as soon as I played it, it was like, oh man, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Teotihuacan, I feel like sort of like, I appreciated a lot of the first game. I admired it a lot more after the second game, and I can see it growing on me.
Yeah.
I just don't think it left as strong as an impression right off the bat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. That's cool.
Mark is wanting to talk about the stupid chess championship where the one dude was like, oh, I want to do a draw even though it doesn't make any sense.
Wait,
now it's going to Armageddon the game.
Interesting. This guy making fun of me, but he knows what happened today. So yeah, today was the 12th and final game of the...
Not the final game.
Well, it was the final regular game, final classic game of the chess championship
game.
Right, exactly. Of the chess championship between Magnus Carlsen, the current champion, and the American Fabio Caruano. So yeah, Fabiano versus Magnus. Today was match number 12. You get 1 point for winning. You get half a point for drawing. First person to 6.5 wins. So there have been 11 previous matches. They've all been drawn. Every single game has been a draw.
Wow.
And so today was the whoever won today's game, if there was a winner, would be the champion, the world chess champion. And it ended, as Kellen mentioned, on a interesting draw. There was an early draw offered by Carlsen that was taken. Anyway, so in 2 days, the world champion of chess is going to be determined. They're going to be playing, instead of a classic game, which can go for 7 hours, they're going to be playing a much tighter game. Carlsen is the big-time favorite because he excels at that sort of game. Anyway, I'm saying all this because even though they've all drawn games, just the analysis is so interesting. I find it so interesting. I would recommend anybody listening who's even remotely interested to go to YouTube and check out the Chess Network channel. It's all one word, Chess Network. There are post-game analysis by a guy named Jerry. He analyzes the game in a way that laymen would understand it and find interesting. Just they're fascinating. Yeah, so by the time this episode drops, the championship will have been determined. But yeah, 12 draws seems boring, or every day when I come home from work, I can't wait to see the recap. I can't wait to see what happened because they're just really interesting.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I have 2 jokes.
Okay, go for it.
Where are you going home to?
All right.
Since you don't have a home.
That's right. Okay. I can't answer that question because I don't have a home.
2, who is the layman that Jerry is speaking to? Are you the layman?
I think you're the layman. When I think layman, I think Kellen.
I'm not the one who listens to Jerry.
Right. No, I'm just saying I, as a non-layman, can appreciate that laymen such as yourself would appreciate it.
And listeners of the podcast, listen to that, guys. He's insulting you.
Even you, layman who listens to the podcast.
Right.
Have and always will forever be the voice of the people.
So let's jump into our feature this episode where we're going to be answering questions from you, the listeners. Like I said, we've been sort of taking questions at our email address. That's boardgamebarrage@gmail.com if you want to send in any more questions to us. And we've picked the best ones, and we will be answering them right now. Our first question comes from David. He says, I enjoyed your top 5 cooperative games episode, but it seemed like there was a running joke that Kalen hates co-ops. Is that true or just a joke? Sorry if you already spoke about this in the previous episode. I'm still catching up. Kalen, why do you hate co-ops?
Why do I hate fun? Yeah, so that's not a joke. That's just a fact.
True statement.
Cooperative games strip the life out of what makes board gaming great, which is the social interaction and feistiness among people. You are fighting against a system that is a lot of times sort of a bad algorithm. The way I describe it is that Pandemic, for example, you can lose based on the way the cards have been shuffled. So through no fault of your own, before the game starts, you cannot win. And that's absurd and barely qualifies as a game, in my opinion.
Isn't it true, though, Kellen, that the joy that we get from playing a game is more in the experience of having played the game versus the outcome?
Oh, using your own words against you.
I think if I liked people more, I might agree with what you're saying. Cooperative games also tend to have a lot of upkeep and back-end systems. Spirit Island is one that we've sort of talked about. I can't necessarily get behind, and I think the smaller and shorter a cooperative game is, the more I tend to enjoy it. Things like The Mind or Hanabi or The Game, these are all really simple things. But when you start dragging it out and making it an hour-long, a 2-hour-long affair, there's just no tension for me in terms of what am I trying to win? You know, when we get near the end of a game, Mark versus Kellen is palpable. Mark will do anything to beat me.
True.
Which is sort of a testament to my strength in the game group. And when it's a co-op, you know, there are tense moments and good games build in those tense moments, but sometimes it's like, oh, we won.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, oh, this bad thing happened through no fault of our own.
And there was nothing we could have maybe done about it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand where I don't agree, but I do understand. That's interesting you mentioned Spirit Island because we actually also have a question about that specifically. This one comes in from Daniel. He says, has Kalen played more Spirit Island? It's one of my favorite games, and I'd be curious to hear if his impressions have gotten better or worse.
I have not, and I would play it again, but I think we even cut out some of my impressions last time because I sort of waxed and waned and webbed and flowed, for lack of better words. Spirit Island has a lot, like I just mentioned, going on in the back end.
Yeah.
A lot of timing is hyper important to the game, which is, well, first this happens, then that happens, and then these cards move along this track, and things can be fast or they can be slow. And a lot of what you're doing is sort of planning around that.
Yeah, that's absolutely accurate.
And if it was just fast and slow, I think that would be great. But sometimes it's even more specific than that, is we need one more fear token in order to trigger our event card. Is that the right?
Yeah, but that's true. I honestly can't think in that many games where I've felt that closely about counting the amount of fear we have left. Because fear always feels like an incidental bonus more than something we're explicitly planning for.
And so rather than outthinking an opponent, we're outthinking the structure of that game. I think where Spirit Island excels is all those different spirits that you can play. I'd love to do it again, but I'll let Neelan sort of be the intern in the corner doing all the upkeep, so that I can just have the fun part of the game.
I actually want to jump in on this one because there's something that I think in the most recent time I played this, that it kind of clicked that this was becoming more and more apparent in almost every game of Spirit Islands I played, in that there feels like this very constructed arc to every game of Spirit Island where things ramp up and you feel like it's overwhelming, and then your power gets sufficient that you can sort of slowly deal with it. That could just be a byproduct of us not playing at the correct difficulty, but it does almost feel a little bit to me sometimes that if that's the arc of every single game, then that is in itself inherently unsatisfying. Like, right. you want those sort of good moments to sort of happen naturally, and not just feel like they're designed into the core of the game. I don't know how true that is
at such a high level, Neelan.
That's exactly it. It is interesting, and it's something I'm sort of going to be thinking about a lot more as I play it in the future.
Well, this sounds similar to my discussion on Euro games and whether a game can be balanced if everyone scores within 10 points of each other. We sort of say, wow, that's good balance, or it's a tight game, when in reality that sort of reveals a lack of a decision space.
Right, a lack of...
So no matter what you do, the game will arc you sort of in the perfect way.
Right. It feels pre-scripted versus like emergent, rather.
And I don't know that that's necessarily a problem with certain games as an experience, but Spirit Island certainly presents itself as a very challenging, mental, brain-burny affair, and it would be problematic at best if that always happens. And I'm sure that's not always the case, and there's a lot of difficulty modifiers and things you can sort of swing up and down, which I abhor. But yay for very...
But you like this. Would you call this like among your favorite...
I think you said it was your favorite co-op, didn't you?
Your favorite like...
Did you even listen to me talk?
Your favorite medium to heavy co-op?
Yeah, this would be my favorite heavy co-op. Ghost Stories is real good, and that's not as nearly as heavy, though.
Yeah.
That would be the other one I kind of sort of like. Mm-hmm. But it's all sort of under this banner of kind of sort of.
Yeah.
Okay.
Notice all the questions are sort of directed at the man of the people.
Yeah.
You're so unclear about...
Two of the questions I chose up front were directed at
You're so concise that they don't need...
That's right.
...any
gotta get to the point.
Elaboration. Not that you edit yourself into sort of these nice, pithy statements.
This next question comes from Kevin. What are your best bang-for-your-buck board games? I like any question that can end up with Gloomhaven and Crazy Words as equally acceptable answers, but for fun, I started thinking in terms of bang for your buck based upon various levels. For example, low $20 or less, medium $20 to $60, and high more than $60. I'd love to hear what games you guys would consider. So yeah, at like different price points, what do you think are the most value for money, bang for your buck board games?
So the idea being that Crazy Words and Gloomhaven, one cost $5 and one costs $100.
Could both be acceptable answers to this question.
Bang for your buck.
Yeah.
And they both seem like great answers. To be
I mean, look, those would definitely be among our choices.
One of the two being better than the other. Crazy Words is a better game than Gloomhaven.
Objectively.
Yeah, that's objectively speaking, and can't be argued. So don't even try.
Right. I'm going to throw out sort of generalized sort of social deduction games. I feel like something like The Resistance is going to be my go-to answer for this a lot of the times. But Insider, Werewords, One Night Ultimate Werewolf, those are all very low price point games that you could just play on repeat with different groups and have entirely different experiences with. I think that's a pretty good genre for that long shelf life game.
Yeah, I think bang for your buck, you're looking for something that you're going to play over and over again.
Yeah.
This is largely similar to kind of like a favorite games list / games that we play a lot. And for me, on the under $20 category, you're looking at games that are more about the people than the game, because you can get bored of a mechanism. You have sort of a midweight Euro game where once you've figured out the puzzle, once you've played that 6 or 7 times, that's sort of worn itself out. But where you're specifically engaged with the people, I think is where under $20 works. Codenames, perfect example. Skull, great example. No Thanks, I think, is a quick filler game where, depending on what kind of players you play with, we played this a couple weeks ago with a non-board gamer completely, and she was just playing erratically, and I got screwed. But that was fun and different, because when you're playing it with a ton of gamers, the strategies emerge in a different way. But in this case, I had to sort of adapt to that, and so the game allows you to do that, which I think makes for a great bang for your buck. It's going to feel different substantively with different groups.
Right. Time's Up is one I feel we have to mention as well, kind of for similar reasons. Like, that is so specific to the people you're playing it with, and almost the game and the specific words you're talking about are almost irrelevant. Just the social aspect of the people you're playing it with.
Yeah, I think the one sort of through line of the games you guys are mentioning are they could be classified as party games. They mostly work with larger groups.
Right. I feel like you'd be hard pressed to find strategy games at the under $20. I mean, I guess that's not entirely true.
No, I mean, I think and I haven't gotten there. I think that's more where we started. Because Biblios is a great example.
Yeah.
Stole my thunder.
I just like
There's
to talk,
only one
Mark.
answer for under 20 games. If you're not looking for a party game, you got to have Biblios.
Yeah. Or the superior For Sale is another one that's under $20.
And it's not, that wouldn't be considered a party game. Yeah, that's a great answer.
But you've got things like Arboretum, Crazy Penguins.
Innovation is one I'm surprised you haven't mentioned yet.
Innovation as a 2-player game is the game that keeps on giving. You could play this so many times and still not know what cards are going to come up.
Yeah.
And that's where bang for your buck works for me.
Yeah.
Right. So what about at around like the middle price point, around $40?
Well, even much less than that, I'd say. I think this is around 25. Castles of Burgundy, considered by many to be the best Feldian game and one of the best Euro games out there. It's hard to beat that for bang for the buck.
If you want a brown box
with brown pieces,
you can buy anything on Amazon and they'll ship it to you in a brown box.
That's true. Yeah, you're not buying castles for the art, definitely, but for the replayability and for point salad at its best, I think you'd be hard pressed to find something better than the value you get for Castles of Burgundy. One of the games that pops to mind for me, and again, this is on the lower end, is a game like Azul. It's a game like Kalen sort of mentioned where you're playing against the players. It's abstract, but there's also a passive aggressiveness where you're taking tiles strictly to make life difficult for your opponents. There's a lot in it, and it's also, again, a beautiful design, rather simple to teach, and I feel like replayability is big on when you're looking for bang for your buck, and you can play Azul any number of times.
I think Splendor is another great one that can be played over and over again, though I know many will disagree, and I don't know the hatred that Splendor... People get so bored by Splendor that they hate it.
Yeah.
Which is a weird reaction to boredom. But Splendor, I'll say it again, Splendor.
Yeah, Splendor's a great choice.
Blue Lagoon and Through the Desert are both Reiner Knizia great games that are really, really interactive with using a Go-like mechanism, both in that $20 to $40 range, and both highly recommended.
Yeah, Taj Mahal is a good one at this middle price point. It's a game that, like a lot of Knizia's designs, just sort of surprises you with sort of how... in a very simple rule set, sort of how rewarding repeat plays of it can be. I feel like I learn something new about each of these games every single time I play them.
And while we're talking about Knizia designs, his masterpiece, Tigris and Euphrates, would fall under this. And again, it's another game where you can... every play is going to present a different challenge. So there's a lot in there. Really, any Knizia. So many Knizia games that are samurai.
Anything by the Doctor.
Yeah.
Is good bang for your buck.
Okay, what about at the higher end of the scale? So games that are like quite expensive, and I think Kevin had said $60, but I think we can sort of get more ambitious. Like, what are the games that are like quite premium, expensive games that you still feel are worth every dollar? The one that jumps to mind for me is Cthulhu Wars, I would say.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't like Cthulhu, and I don't like how Neelan pronounces Cthulhu. I have no love of the mythos, no love of the scariest thing is, what you don't see. I don't know. But anyway, Cthulhu Wars is fantastic. All of the different races add so much to the game. I highly recommend Cthulhu Wars. I know it's been on sale for around $90 here on some of these Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales. It's well worth it if you're a fan of area control, if you're a fan of highly confrontational games. It's highly strategic, but still has enough luck in it to make you want to come back. And I think what makes it very, very replayable is that no matter what set of factions you have in the game, that's going to be a very, very different game, as each faction has sort of 3 or 4 different builds that they're sort of looking at and trying to figure out which way to go. I love Cthulhu Wars.
Yeah, it's one of those sort of rare asymmetric games where not only is the joy in playing each faction, but in playing every faction a different way every time you do it. Like, every time you play one of those factions, like you said, you think at the end of the game, oh, I would do this faction differently next time.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of that comes down to the spellbook system, which basically is 6 milestones that once you hit them, you unlock one of your 6 abilities, but you get to choose the order in which you hit those milestones and what power that unlocks. So you can try for a different way. You can say that's probably the easiest thing to start with this game, but then you can unlock one of 6 powers for doing that.
Right.
And everything feels like you want to do it first, but you can't.
Right. I mean, Gloomhaven is definitely on my list, but to nudge you maybe, I feel like Mansions of Madness is
Mansions of Madness, I would say. I didn't even think of that, but that's a great co-op that I would highly recommend at this price point. We've also talked about another one that I would say, Spirit Island.
Yeah, Spirit Island is definitely...
You get a lot of bang for your buck.
Yeah.
I'd also recommend some of the 18xx games.
He doesn't actually play these guys. He just recommends them to sound smart.
If you're talking about wanting a really, really deep, rich experience, 18xx and Coin, I'd recommend for beginners either of those series, 1830 or 1846. Those are good introductory 18xx games, or Cuba Libre, as I mentioned before, for Coin.
How do you feel about 1818 and its variant offshoot 1831?
I don't believe 1818 exists, and I'm going to say 1831 doesn't also exist. I mean, whatever you say probably doesn't exist, and you're making everything up.
Shows what you know about the 1890s games.
Yeah, I would recommend those, though.
Archipelago is a perennial favorite of mine that is quite expensive, $50 plus. There's a ton of stuff in this box. It's a beautiful production. I think what makes it very replayable is that there may or may not be a hidden traitor in every game. So right off the bat, you've got wildly different experiences if someone is tanking the game or is not tanking the game. That paranoia is sort of an experience in and of itself. You can play short, medium, or long games, which I've actually still never played a long game, and I've played it many, many times. Everyone gets a hidden win condition, a hidden victory point. What will score points? Pineapples will score points this game. And there are 10 of those cards, and so if you have 4 players, you're using 4 out of 10. So what's important in each game will change. And then you have a crisis deck, which changes the crises that you will face and the things that are important to have sort of on the island. And the way that the archipelago is spawned is sort of as you explore. So you get wildly different feelings as you play Archipelago.
I'll throw out a mention to Rising Sun, which is certainly one of my favorite games of the year. A lot of this is contingent on like Kickstarter extras, which I happen to have, but the retail box is still pretty expensive and still a pretty nice box, and I would still say worth every dollar.
I'd agree with that.
I think that about covers it for this question, yeah?
Yeah.
I'm surprised, Mark, you didn't try hard us with sort of a cost per play of your collection, which I'm sure you have a spreadsheet for somewhere.
I do. I have a dynamic spreadsheet.
It auto updates?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. As soon as a play gets in, I get a notification about what my current cost per play is at the moment.
Goody.
Our final question for this episode comes from Paxton. He says, I don't understand how the three of you are friends. If I disagreed with my friends that much, I'd have gotten new friends a long time ago.
Paxton, you couldn't be
more correct. Yeah.
Is this
I'm
a question?
actively searching for more friends on a constant basis.
If you would like to be my friend, Paxton, you know where to reach me.
I mean, Brass is being played behind our backs. Teotihuacan is being played behind our backs.
Case in
Mansion
point.
of Madness is being played behind our
It's interesting
backs.
the common element here is Kalen not being part of either of these.
That's strange.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's almost as
just
if there was a reason for it. Yeah,
coincidence.
right.
Okay, let's get real.
Yeah.
I'll get real here for you, Paxton. The true answer is aftercare. Aftercare is after you get done yelling at each other.
Right.
You sort of cuddle and or hold hands.
This doesn't make it to the episode, but
after the episode.
Yeah.
So that we still like each other.
Right.
That is a secret of the Board Game Barrage podcast. You may have gotten a preview of that with our Gen Con episode where we went between the sheets together and also had freezer pants.
Yeah.
But no joke, we'll real talk for a second. We have had episodes where we either stop or sit at the end and go, we're cool, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Like are you okay has been asked more than once. Like, I genuinely think that's important, especially like, given the nature of the games that we talk about a lot, these sort of highly competitive, highly interactive games, like there is something super important about that. Hey guys, we're all good, right? Like even before you play that game, it's like, this is going to hurt maybe, but we're all good and we're all going to continue to be good. And yeah, to some extent, I feel like we've actually genuinely done that.
Yeah.
I think that it's hard because Nealon is very expressive when he shows weakness. So he emotes sort of this weakness, and then I just pounce on it. You know what I mean? Whether that's in a game of Rising Sun or whether that's on the podcast, I see something that's making him squirm.
He's got a South African tell.
And then I just go for it.
There you go.
But I think, there have been moments, going back to like episode 4 or 5, Rising Sun, where it's very clear that I was more salty than I should have been.
Yeah, but in the moment when that actually happened after or at the end of the game, that was a heated situation.
Absolutely.
But it made for a really interesting experience. And I knew even as it was going on, even when it was like at its most heated, I knew that we'd be fine after. That's what sort of like allowed, at least for me, I don't feel like I have to like censor myself around you guys when it comes to playing games or being aggressive. And I know that things are going to be good afterwards. And I think it's just a sign of good opponents, good friends, that you can sort of be yourself.
And it does make those area control games sing, as Nealon would like to say. Because, if you're worried about hurting someone's feelings when you're about to attack them, or sort of, we have sort of a no rules, we're just going for it.
Yeah.
And, if you need a hug at the end, that's fine. And that makes those games better.
Yeah, because otherwise you're like shaving the claws off of what's good about those games. Like,
right. And there are games where, I've heard of groups playing Scythe where they have even less interaction than the game wants you to have, just because, we like the building up of our engines, but not the fighting part. And it's like, well, are you actually playing Scythe at that point?
That's fair. Yeah. I've definitely played games with other groups where I felt like the game experience was lessened because people were afraid of hurting other people's feelings, and it just made me appreciate our group even more, because we can really dig in and not have to worry about, these offenses that aren't really even offenses.
I think one of the things I was also sort of telling about like the Rising Sun episode is like, even if we didn't intrinsically know that we were going to bounce back and be fine, our willingness to talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, we turned it into an episode.
Right.
Like just talking through how we were felt and were affected by it. Like, yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
And then we got angry emails where someone called me daft. Was that the...
Well, maybe,
I wouldn't call that angry as much as accurate.
Rational.
Yeah. Level-headed.
Just keep sending in your emails telling me that I'm your favorite, the man of the people, because they did try to vote me out a few weeks ago. Avid listeners will remember. Sometimes it hurts.
Or if you want to just keep calling Kellen daft, you can do that.
That's always appreciated.
That's always welcome email.
Yeah.
Just say red tank equals daft. That's fine. We like that too.
Dock you a point on the website. That's going to do it for this episode, I think. Thank you all so much for listening, and thank you for sending in questions. We got a bunch, and I know we didn't get through all of them, but we'll probably come back to this down the line. So thank you for sending them in. They were fun to read and answer. As always, please reach out to us on our social media, on Twitter and Facebook, or send us an email. If you want to send us a question that we might answer down the line, then you can do that at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com, or you can just ask it on the Facebook group or any of the other channels that we talk about all the time. On the guild, I'm going to have a topic that's just going to be dedicated for sending in questions. That's boardgamebarrage.com/guild.
Don't forget, we have a contest running for Azul Sintra. You can enter that contest by following us on YouTube and or Facebook. We are trying to build up those communities in anticipation of some upcoming video releases. So be excited about that. You will get to see me in HD.
Beautiful. It's like poetry.
Boom.
Thank you as always.
That's like almost a pun. Can we cut that?
Nope, staying in. Thank you as always to Heart Society for our intro and outro music, What's on Your Mind, Kid. You can check them out at heartsocietymusic.com. And that's going to do it for this week. Goodbye.
See ya.
Good night and good luck, compatriots.
Sure. Take two.
I feel like that's sort of like one of your life
modus
mottos.
operandi. Yeah, just
Come in and
do it
out
again.
and don't make it a thing.
Yeah.
This does feel like you, Neelan. This should be like your family crest.
Come in and
out and don't make it a thing.
What would be the image on that family crest, Kellen?
It'd be like a hiding, like, the Pokemon is a Diglett.
Yeah.
He's like
Just
hiding in the
yep,
ground.
and then popping
He's
back
up,
in and up.
and then he's gone.
Yep.
All right,
That's it.
that's-
Making as
What's
little
the
an
guy
impression as
with the
possible.
shadow.